Okay, so some big news just dropped, and I feel completely different about this than I did several months ago.
I want some nasty. Are we having fun yet?
All right, Chris Paul. Chris Paul. It seems like his name comes up quite often, but I definitely want to tell you guys how I feel about this whole situation with the Golden State Warriors, in which he was waived, if you have not heard. Now, before we get into that, do not skip this part, please. Go subscribe to Spurs Invasion, link underneath this video. I have it in the description. Please, please, please. I just dropped a second video on this channel talking about Stephon Castle in particular. So guys, please, please, please subscribe to that channel. And it's been showing, or you guys been showing, a lot of love. If you're wondering why I have a second channel, if you haven't heard, I actually made a second channel so I could do more edited content, because I just think, look, we do so much breaking news and random videos on this one, live streams, till I don't want edited content to just get buried underneath all the other videos that we do. So I thought it might be a little bit more beneficial and more helpful for all of our sanity if I just made a second channel altogether. So let me know how you guys like it. Just go to this last video that I did. Please leave some constructive criticism. Please, please, please. I actually took a lot from the first video I made and tried to switch it up with the second one. So let me know what you think. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. So Chris Paul, the San Antonio Spurs are potentially interested. I don't know. I feel like we're always interested. So if you guys have not heard, yes, it is true. The Warriors went ahead and waived Chris Paul. They pushed off initially. They pushed off his guaranteed deal. I guess they were just trying to see if they could get anything for him or what the trade market would look like, and they felt like they couldn't, so they went ahead and waived him. So he is a free agent, unrestricted free agent, so the Spurs could potentially pick him up, and we have been named as one of the very few teams that could end up landing him. So we have the Los Angeles Lakers, the Clippers, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Phoenix Suns. And as you guys know, also, well, you might not know this, years ago, Chris Paul has always been in the mix when it comes to San Antonio, of us potentially get him. This is back in 2017, and I remember this vividly. This is him talking with his mentor. Well, they say it right here. His mentor and friend, Disney CEO Bob Iger. I think that's how you say it, Iger. And listen to this. So he talks about the one reason why, basically the reason why he chose not to come to San Antonio. It was the elephant in the room for him.
Ridiculous. Right. San Antonio, Houston, and Boston. So going to the Spurs, do you know what the biggest wild card is? Greg Popovich. Some people think that he may have, a year or two left. So that's not the Spurs without Greg Popovich.
The Boston would be interesting.
So there you go. So for years he's been saying, well, you know, I could potentially, but I don't know when Pop is going to retire. So we have a better idea, especially with him near the end of his career, and with Popovich with his contract. I think it's pretty blatant now that Popovich isn't going anywhere, so Chris Paul wouldn't have to worry about that. So let me just go ahead and give you my overall thoughts about this whole situation in particular. So before, I was pretty hesitant with bringing in Chris Paul, especially this last season, because I felt as if going after Chris Paul this last season was telling us one of two things, okay? And both of which I do not agree with. They were either saying, one, Trey Jones, he can really benefit from the leadership and mentorship of Chris Paul, and it can really help his game. Trey Jones will never be a star point guard. Never, ever, ever. I will be very shocked in that. I don't think that that's necessary. Anyone can use a mentor. Anyone can use Chris Paul's advice. Don't get me wrong. But I was just not bought in to that. And nor was I bought into this team right now. I mean, before, this draft, and we'll get to that. But this team right now has anybody that can resemble a future point guard. Okay, I never thought Jeremy Sohan would be a point guard, right? I always thought that he's a connector, and the point guard experience would just help him as far as his basketball IQ for the future. Blake Wesley doesn't necessarily play like he could be a primary point guard. Not saying that it can't happen, but I don't know if I really buy into that. And Malachi Branham, you know, we've used him more of a spot up shooter. So I just didn't think it was necessary. Or two, they were either saying, so number one, they were either saying Trey Jones needs the improvement or the help. Or two, they were saying that Chris Paul could be like our savior or whatever. Chris Paul comes to the Spurs and all of a sudden we're a playoff team. I didn't agree with that either, and I didn't want Chris Paul to get a ton of touches, which how things pan out right now or last season, I feel like he would have got some touches. But this situation's a little different. So we just got Stephon Castle, and you guys know I am a big fan of Stephon Castle. If you don't know, Spurs invasion. And I really do believe in what he can become and what he is. But one thing in particular about him is he has ran point guard as primary point guard in high school, but during college with UConn, that wasn't necessarily his role. The motion offense, he was at very least, you know, kind of a connector for them, not necessarily showing everything that he could potentially be. We already know that he said, and he's on record saying, I feel like my game is closer to SGA. So he really does believe that he can be the man. And also he told multitude of teams that he doesn't want to go to their team if they have a primary point guard. So he really does believe that he could be a future point guard in the NBA and make things happen. And with that being said, if the Spurs were to get Chris Paul at a good price, I think that that's actually quite helpful, right? If we want to just fully buy in to the Stephon Castle or into Stephon Castle being a future point guard, if you don't want to actually give Atlanta any of their picks back for Trae Young, I think that this is a fine option to bring in Chris Paul. He'll get a few minutes or whatnot, but I think for the most part, we actually have a player that could directly benefit from having Chris Paul now. So I'm not worried about the whole like, is Chris Paul going to be the savior? I don't know. Don't let any headlines sway you in one way or the other. I don't think that's how the Spurs would view it. And if they did, that would be very foolish, because there's some headlines saying stuff like, oh, Chris Paul could really be a powerhouse with Wemby. And it's like, no, that's not what this would be. But I think Stephon Castle could actually benefit from having a Chris Paul on the team. And the thing about getting Trae Young, if I think that's still on the table, obviously. If the Spurs were to go ahead and do that for a decent price, I mean, as decent as it's going to get, right? I think that he also fits with Trae Young as well. I mean, he's just that type of player. I don't know how he would feel about it, especially where he told teams specifically that he didn't want to play if they have, or not play, but I don't want to go to teams that already have a primary point guard. But that could also have been a way of him swaying teams so he could land to San Antonio just so he could play with Popovich and Wemby. You never know. So there's that. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, see how you guys feel about this right now. Like I said, my opinion of it has changed drastically due to him being a unrestricted free agent, not necessarily worried about making any crazy trades or anything like that. And on top of it, we did just draft a point guard that could benefit from having Chris Paul on his team. So I think it's a pretty good deal for the most part. We already know that the Spurs have pushed back Devontae Graham's contract as well, so don't know what's going to come out of that. I don't know if they're just trying to leave a little bit of cap space open to see what's out there, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, like I said, leave comments below. I'll read them. I am interested in seeing what you guys have to say. And subscribe to Spurs Invasion and this channel that you're currently on right now if you've never been on here. I'll give it to you guys later. Till next time. Bye.